Episode 22 begins with Akise asking Deus if it's possible to revive the dead, to which Deus responds that such a thing is impossible, even for a god. But I thought that Deus said that he can no longer change someone's fate, meaning that he would have had to have that ability at one point. The only conclusion I can come to is that Deus lied to Yuki, but not only do we never get an explanation for why he did this, but none of the characters will acknowledge how he just straight up lied. Akise attempts to leave this dimension in order to warn Yuki, but is quickly stopped by Deus, who then drops a huge reveal about Akise's true nature. He says that he can normally control the futures of all humans, but is unable to do so with diary users who are constantly in control of their own future. Because of this, he decided to create Akise, a fake human who would serve as an unknowing spy for him. Akise was always a bit of a suspicious character, but we never got any real hints towards his true nature. This technically makes the twist more unexpected, but only because none of it was set up beforehand. I'm even confused about the premise of the twist. You're telling me that Deus can't control the futures of diary users, so he created a fake human in order to spy on them? But we've also seen beforehand that Deus can spy on diary users himself. I guess that Akise could have been a precaution in case Deus becomes too weak, but this is never confirmed by the show itself. Deus tells Akise that every action he took wasn't of his own free will, that his involvement in the death game wasn't out of genuine interest, but to serve as an unknowing spy. And now he's going to be destroyed so Deus can harvest his information. Why did Deus wait so long to do this? He supposedly created Akise for the purpose of monitoring the game, yet he's only interested in absorbing the information once it's almost over? Why even create a spy if you're not going to utilize their information? There's genuinely nothing about this twist that makes sense. It's so obviously an attempt at shock value, but all it does is further muddle Deus as a character. Akise claims that his love for Yuki was real, but Deus responds that it was only a fabrication. But right before Akise can be disintegrated, Kamado is able to grant him an apprentice diary. Somehow this convinces Deus of Akise's free will, so he decides to let him live? Even after rewatching this scene multiple times, I've no idea what is going on. How did Akise know ahead of time that Deus was going to kill him? How did he know that gaining an apprentice diary would save his life? And how does having an apprentice diary prove that he has free will? But even when ignoring these glaring questions, the actual twist is kinda pointless. It doesn't really change Akise as a person, and it will barely have an effect on the story, so I can't help but wonder why it happened in the first place. The only important development here is Akise gaining an apprentice diary, but with how easily Kamado can grant these, there's no reason we needed this idiotic reveal. But meanwhile, we see that Yuki and Yuno are on their way to kill Kamado. Yuki reads a diary entry saying that Akise will hand her over and expresses relief that all his friends are on his side. But if you actually read the text on screen, it only says that Akise will aid Yuki, but not Hinata or Mao. It even says that Kosaka will punch him, but for some reason Yuki doesn't even acknowledge this. Once Yuki and Yuno meet up with Akise, they quickly realize that he's acting as a diversion for Kamado. And rather than trying to interrogate Akise for the location, Yuno just immediately stabs him without asking anything. Where do I even start with this? Yuno is a character who isn't above using violence to get what she wants, which is to kill every other diary user so she can survive and become a god. Killing Akise without even interrogating him completely goes against her character, and if Kamado had already escaped at this point, then Yuno would have no leads for tracking her down. But since Kamado's group is also stupid, they only started running away the moment Yuki and Yuno arrive. It's been like 10 minutes since Akise left the Deus dimension, so you can't even say that they didn't have enough time to run away. Also, did they have to take the route that's in perfect view of where Yuki and Yuno are? Or am I supposed to believe that there's no other direction they can go in this massive city? Even if this was the only route, why did Akise lure Yuki and Yuno somewhere where they'd easily be able to spot Kamado? Akise could easily gain leverage over Yuno if he wasn't making the dumbest decisions possible. But then it's revealed that Akise was wearing a protective vest this entire time. It didn't seem that effective with how deep the knife was lodged, but apparently he's totally fine. And how did Yuno not notice that he's wearing a vest? Not only is there no blood, but I feel like stabbing a vest would feel very different to stabbing human flesh. Also, why did Yuki's diary lie to him twice about Akise? It should be recording all of his future observations, yet it conveniently left out those two? Yuno then tries attacking with a taser, but Akise blocks it with a rubber glove. He explains that his diary can foresee the actions of other diary users, even taking into account how they'll change the future. Yuno tells Yuki to go after the others while she takes care of Akise, but what is there to be taken care of? Akise isn't an immediate threat, there's just no clear way of killing him. So if Yuki and Yuno left the house to start chasing Kamado, then there's nothing Akise could do to stop them. I already feel comfortable calling this one of the worst episodes of the show, and we're not even halfway through. Yuki is eventually able to get in range of Kamado, but Hinata stops him from shooting. She tries to convince Yuki that he's being manipulated, saying that Yuno lied to him about it being possible to revive the dead. I feel like I'm being gaslit here. Weren't Deus and Murmur the ones who led Yuki to believe that any of this was possible? All Yuno did was repeat the lie after the fact, so why is she the main source of blame? We then see that Akise has restrained Yuno after her failed attempts to kill him, although I have to say that I have no idea how we got here. Since when is Akise strong enough that he can hold down a person who is currently trying to stab him without any effort? It's visually awkward due to Akise being a scrawny teenager, but it also might have been worth setting up this strength before the moment it becomes relevant. Akise plans to keep Yuno here while Hinata talks down Yuki. He also decides to explain this plan to Yuno for literally no reason. Akise has nothing to gain from making Yuno more desperate unless he's actively trying to make things harder for himself. Yuno then uses her knife to stab herself in the stomach, saying that if she dies, Yuki will no longer be willing to trust his friends. So you're telling me that Akise is strong enough to pin Yuno to the ground and keep her arm in place for an extended period of time, yet not strong enough to stop her from stabbing herself? Seems really convenient to me. I also just don't believe that Yuno had no other way out of this. Why doesn't she just move her entire body in order to shake Akise off? Why doesn't she knee him in the groin with her right leg? Why doesn't she attack Akise's leg if she's able to move her knife downward? It was also just established that Akise can predict Yuno's actions, yet he couldn't predict her stabbing herself? The reason we get is that Yuno let herself get defeated like the diary said, but that doesn't excuse the complete lack of context given to Akise. Right after dressing Yuno's wounds, Akise tries to call Yuki while running in his direction, and as we'll quickly learn, he didn't take Yuno's phone from her. This would not only prevent Yuno from contacting Yuki too soon, but would give Akise the ability to kill her whenever he wants. There's just no universe in which leaving Yuno with her phone is a good idea. Yuno then tells Yuki that Akise is going to kill her, and once he reads in his diary that Yuno is bleeding out, it's enough to convince Yuki that his friends can't be trusted, so he proceeds to murder Hinata and Mao with little hesitation. This is far and away Yuki's most unhinged moment. Even if he's convinced that his friends betrayed him, it should not be this easy for him to just murder them. This is the same character who completely forgave his dad for murdering his mom. How am I supposed to believe that this character shift isn't just a complete ass pull? Kosaka pretends at first that he doesn't care about his dead friends, and that'll just allow Yuki to kill Kamado. Not only does Yuki fall for this suspicious behavior, but allows Kosaka to get behind him. I thought that he's completely lost trust in his friends, yet he gives Kosaka the perfect chance to attack him from behind. But rather than trying to disarm Yuki while he has the chance, Kosaka thinks it's a good idea to start taunting him, because who cares about self-preservation, I guess. This prompts Yuki to revert to his psychopathic self and kill Kosaka. Akise then arrives at the scene in order to talk Yuki down. He says that he should have killed Yuno when he had the chance, and that letting her live led to the deaths of all his friends, which of course ignores the incredibly obvious solution of just taking her phone. And despite murdering all of his friends, Akise makes it clear that he still cares about Yuki and wants to help him. I thought the point of the opening scene was that Akise now has free will, so why is he so obsessed with Yuki that he will completely forgive him for doing something this awful? It's not like Yuki has any redeeming traits, so the only conclusion I can come to is that Akise is still brainwashed. But then that just brings us back to the question of why Deus thinks he has free will now. There's not really any way you can read this that doesn't make the story worse. Akise says that Yuno is planning to kill Yuki and that she intentionally tricked him into thinking it's possible to revive the dead. Yuki clearly doesn't want to hear this and pulls the trigger, only to realize that his gun is out of bullets. Hold on a minute, how is Yuki already out of bullets? The revolver he's holding can carry 5, yet he ran out after only shooting 3? Either Yuki didn't fully load his gun for no reason, or the writers forgot how to count. We then see Yuno arrive at the scene, and a fight breaks out between her and Akise. You'd think the amount of blood Yuno lost would make her significantly weaker, yet it seems to be having no effect on her abilities. Akise's diary informs him that he'll kill Yuno by breaking her phone, which she just happens to be holding in her offhand. Akise breaks it with the metal pipe he's holding, only to realize that the diary is a fake. But before Akise can do anything to react, Yuno slices his throat. Besides being yet another scene where Akise's diary leaves out information, he should have been suspicious about how Yuno is just waving her diary around. It's not immediately useful to her like Akise's is, and will immediately kill her when broken. It should be painfully obvious to Akise that something isn't right here, yet he completely falls for Yuno's deception. There were multiple points throughout the episode where Akise should have won, yet he ends up losing due to a combination of stupid decision making and inconsistent mechanics. Basically, it's one of the worst character deaths I've ever seen. Yuno then walks up to Kamado in order to kill her, and despite everything his friends told him, Yuki doesn't stop her. And as Kamado's dying, she asks Yuki to create a world where all children can live in peace. This was probably meant to be a sad moment, but I find it pretty hollow due to how little characterization Kamado has gotten. She's a complete plot device whose only real character trait is that she cares about children. While Akise is bleeding out, he thinks back to the phone Yuno was holding. It was a real future diary that worked the same as Yuno's, but the difference is that it refers to Yuki by his last name instead of his first. This means that Yuno had 2 functioning diaries this entire time, yet Deus never did anything about it? That already doesn't make sense on its own, but it'll only get worse once we get more information. Akise uses the information he has to figure out Yuno's identity, but since the show hasn't revealed this yet, I'll refrain from talking about it here. Akise stands up and starts walking towards Yuki, desperate to relay this information to him. And despite the fact that he's been bleeding from his throat for at least a minute, Akise is not only still alive, but able to walk. He's about to show Yuki a message on his phone, but is quickly stopped by Yuno, who somehow uses a small knife to cut his head off. Unless Akise is no skeleton, I have no idea how this is possible. But despite literally having no head, Akise is able to make a few steps towards Yuki, tilt his phone to show the message, and then hold this position for multiple seconds. This genuinely might be the dumbest moment of the show. We're at the point where not having a brain is treated as a mild inconvenience. Even if Akise isn't a real human, the show never established that he has any sort of magical powers, let alone being able to control his body after decapitation. I'm not exaggerating when I say that episode 22 is the worst so far. It is a constant barrage of stupidity that only gets worse the more I think about it. The opening scene with Deus is completely incoherent. Yuki killing his friends was hilarious with how little sense it made. Akise is given every possible advantage, yet is still too stupid to win. And the final shot of the episode kind of just speaks for itself. I struggle to think of a worse TV episode than this, and it perfectly encapsulates everything wrong with Future Diary.